Welcome to Day Text with Greg Stafford. I present these videos as a way for you and me to work our way progressively through the biblical texts and related histories and documents. Previously, I would usually do the show live, weekdays and Saturday morning, and then on Sundays we do a special show where we don't consider the day texts the way we do in the progressive manner that we go through them like in this show. But I'm going to switch over and just start uploading videos because the live streams of the day texts, it just gets a little too distracting with some of the comments and questions and different people that get involved. Sometimes you get a variety of different nuts. Sometimes you get people who just have questions that they haven't resolved. But that's not really what I'm here for. I'm not really here to help people who really can read or research the same things I can, but that just want me to research it for them. As a Christian, we're not supposed to do that, and I'm not going to allow people to continue to do it to me. I realize people have questions. So do I. And that's why I research and study. And if you don't have the time to research and study, well, then that's why I make these videos and other people provide things for you so that you can still find answers to your questions. But I find most of the time, and in fact, by far, the questions I get, I've already answered many times. And I'll still get people who want me to answer them. Not only have I answered them, but the Bible is fairly clear when it comes to, well, pretty much everything. Unless it's some complicated prophecy or chronology that is meant to be fulfilled in later days, there's really not a lot that's hard to figure out. And so it's frustrating at times when I get people who can read like I can. They have the same access to the biblical text that I do. They can look up articles and things just like I can. They don't. Or they just refuse to and come to me and want me to do it for them. I'm not going to do it anymore. So I appreciate that you may have a motive that just is genuine. You want to find out more. But the way you do that is you actually just go research your own question or be satisfied with the answer you have. You certainly shouldn't be a medium for everyone else's questions that you don't have. Right? If I don't have these kinds of questions that regularly come up, right? I'm presenting three things: belief in Jah, Jesus, and how we should treat each other. Right? I don't go asking you questions to research for me. So why would I want you doing that to me? Why would you think that's a good idea to do? Especially if you're Christian and you know specifically, Paul tells you not to do that. You're not supposed to burden other people with your questions. And if you're not a believer and you're over the age of 12, as I've said before, you're still capable of answering your own questions, right? I don't have some secret knowledge that I'm keeping from you and that you just need to find out. No, it's just all right there. You know, in the very same text we always read about and read. So all I do when you ask me a question is I just go to the very text we're reading. And most of the time, as I've said, I've already answered the question. People still ask me. So in either case, I'm going to just eliminate or very much limit live stream involvement, but I'll keep uploading videos so that those who are interested and who actually just want to benefit from the material I provide, it's all free, right? You don't have to pay for any of this or do anything else. You just turn it on, you just hit play, right? As long as you have access to the internet, you have the videos. So why would you ask me to do anything else for you? Right? I'm not obligated to you in any way, especially if you're not part of my family or my immediate community, like close by in ways where I've actually met you and you're like near in ways that make sense for us to talk about other things in life. Otherwise, you're supposed to do that where you are. You're supposed to be helping people near you, right? Your neighbor, the one near you. If you have questions, go to the people near you. If they can't answer your questions, well, now you know why I get so frustrated at times. They can answer your question. They just don't want to. They're not interested. And quite frankly, I'm not sure you are too. If you still have the question and you haven't actually taken the time to go research it, right? Everybody would like for other people to do their work for them. But why would you cheat other people in life? have them do work, take time out of their schedule, and the people who really need them, just so they can read the same text you can read and come up with the same answer to the same question. The fact that we disagree isn't going to change the fact that we're going to come up with our own answers. So if you know we don't agree, why would you ask me a question? Right? Is it not clear that I'm reading these texts, sharing with you my opinion? What else do you want? You don't need to ask me the question. I'm reading to you the text. I believe what it says. So you already know what I believe. You already know the answer to the question. You either just don't believe or you're not reading the texts. Pretty much that simple. So let's get to the text. You see how much we get caught up with these sidetrack questions and irrelevant issues, people not doing their own work, wasting years of their life, and then trying to get others to do it too? It's terrible. Such disrespect. Direct violation of the biblical text too. And it's not one person, or even it's many of you. Not you personally. I know, again, most of you genuinely just want to learn more. I get it. Well, go learn more then. Am I not helping you learn more already with all these videos and the writings and the things I'm trying to do? Well, so I don't, oh, that's it. Either that helps you or it doesn't. And quite frankly, I don't think you need anywhere near this number of videos and texts to conclude the three things are true. So, we're way over the top in terms of what you really need. This is all great. This is all bonus stuff, right? Do you not yet understand the basis for what we believe? Well, you either accept it or you don't. It's not going to change. Like I said, there's no hidden information that I've got and I'm just holding it away from you. No, I tell you every day exactly what I believe and why. That's it. There's no, if you don't see what I'm saying and why, well, there's really no other way I can present it. Maybe sometimes there's a simpler way, but I really go out of my way to make the text plain, use simple analogies, facts. If that's not enough, I don't really have much after that. So, I can always find other texts, but if what I'm giving you isn't really sufficient, at least for you to then take on your own and figure out a little bit more, there's nothing more I can really do for you. Take what you can, go forward with it, help as many people as possible, but don't send me questions, don't send me messages, well, there's not going to be a live stream for a while, but if we do it again, don't burden me with those things. You're supposed to be posting information that would supplement what we're doing, not be like the apologetic nuts or other people who just don't care. They don't believe. We know they're there. We can see. I'm talking about the people who are supposed to already believe, right? There's really no excuse, like I said, in this world with all this information and text, why you can't read it and figure out what to do next. That's all I'm doing. Speaking of next, we're in the book of Genesis chapter 3, and we've been reading in the section that I've translated about how the whispering creature deceived Eve. Adam then also did what he was not to do because of Eve, because of his feelings toward her. He didn't reprove her. He didn't take her to Jaho. He just ate with her. So in effect, he ratified what she had done without correcting her. And then they hear the sound of Jaho, God, in the garden. It doesn't say they see him. It doesn't say they heard his voice. Not yet. It says they heard the sound, which you might interpret as a voice, depending on how you see that word in the Greek and Hebrew texts. But I see it more as a sound of Jaho, God, entering the garden, the enclosed space, the special place, and Adam and Eve recognizing that sound, but not responding to it. And it seems to indicate that previously that's what they would have done, because Jaho, God, seems to expect that they will come. But they don't, because they're hiding. They're hiding from God in the tree or trees in the middle of the special place. Why are they hiding? Well, they ate from the tree that gives you knowledge of good and bad, because it's the only thing at that time that would tell man and woman good and bad. As Jah then continued to tell them the things that they needed to know, versus them choose for themselves to decide what was right and wrong. They're not ready for that. That's obvious because the text shows right here, as we experience ourselves today. This isn't like something we have to look at in a detached sense. It's way back, but it's the same condition. They're naked. And they feel shame. There's something about the condition that made them feel shame. And that feeling, I believe, is vanity. The same thing that Solomon said is in everything. And vanity, that's why we wear clothes, right? Some of us more or less than others, but ultimately, clothes are to make us look better, more presentable. Well, Jaho God never said we weren't presentable. You see? We started to tell ourselves we weren't presentable in ways that then showed by our actions in making the clothes that we had done what Jaho God said not to do. Or someone told us something that wasn't true. Right? And Jaho says those two same things. Let's take a look. Verse 8, Hebrew translation, chapter 3, Genesis. Then the man and the woman began to hear a sound belonging to Jaho God, as if moving about the garden during the afternoon wind. But the man and the woman started to hide from the person of Jaho God among the trees of the enclosed garden or special place. Verse 8, Greek translation. Then the man and the woman heard the sound of Lord Jaho God as he moved around. Let me bring this up for you. As he moved around during the afternoon in the enclosed garden. But both the man and his woman hid from the person of Lord Jaho God in among the tree belonging to the enclosed garden. All right, so now verse 9. Now we're going to read what I was just talking about, how Jaho God, he had made a sound, they had heard it, but they hid because they were ashamed, because they were naked. Now they know it, and they feel vain because of it, a condition Jaho God did not want them to have yet, and that obviously leads to vanity, leads to many terrible things, which it did. And in this case, it made them initially become alienated from Jaho, so much so they hid from him. So verse 9, Jaho God, Hebrew translation, began to call out to the man. And he began asking him, where are you? Verse 9, Greek translation, so Lord Jaho God called out to the man, and he said to the man, where are you? Okay, so we can see right here again that Jaho God, even though he's created everything and he knows all the possibilities, he knows all the possible names that Adam could vocally express in response to him bringing the animals and woman. But he didn't know according to the account which ones he would say until he said it. He just knew all the possible ways he could name the animals because of the creation of the vocalic expression that allows for different sounds to be made. So, but he didn't choose to know what Adam would name them. He just let him do it. Jaho God can determine things to happen. He can make them happen, just like bringing about the Messiah through the line of David. And in that way, he can know people like Jacob versus Esau in ways that he is making so that through them, the body of the Messiah will come, in Jacob's case. And that he chose him over Esau because of that reason, Messiah, and the things that Jacob represented versus Esau, that Jaho could see in the genetic inheritance and lineage through Abraham and Isaac. So now let's take a look. So Jaho God, he comes into the garden and they hear him, they hide. And he says, because they don't come out. They're not out like is normal. This is why I say, normally I think they would have heard the sound of Jaho God, whatever that was, knowing that would tell them he's there. And they would come out. But they didn't this time because of the vanity and the nakedness and the disobeying what he said. So now he's asking them, where are you? Now, obviously, Jaho God, because they're alive, they have his spirit, he can find them. Right? He could figure out where they are based on everything we know from the creation of the events which preceded this. That power is consistent with that ability. But he's choosing not to do that. That's not what he does, right? It's like a parent. You can choose to put a camera that watches your son all the time in his room, or you leave them in their room, you let them do what they do, and you check on them as you need to. We do this even in a human way, in many human ways. It's consistent with how we're made. And whose image are we made in? Jaho's. So here he is with the man, enclosed garden, all his spirit sons of God. No one has resisted him yet in the way that he would probably do anything different even if he thought that was possible. I'm sure he could have determined it was possible if he chose to. But that assumes that that was something that any of his sons of God was going to do. Because if he doesn't determine that it's something someone has to do in order for his purpose to be done, he lets them do it. So there's nothing to look into to see what they're going to do. They haven't done it yet. If he's not foretelling it and determining it for his purpose sake and allowing it to happen, there's nothing to look forward into. He's not determining it. So this is why people, when they ask the question, God would know all things that would ever occur, they assume that there's something that's actually going to occur for him to know in all situations. It's not the case. And even when it is the case, like right here, he chooses not to know. Or with the naming of the animals, right? So these are basic things. If you can't come away from these texts with those things, like many Calvinists and other nuts do, who put God into a limited box where he has to know and even predetermine in most, if not all cases, all things, so that he effectively becomes responsible, which is what many people want. Now, they might not see it that way, but this allows other people to get away with their guilty conscience, because if God's responsible ultimately for all things, knowing all things and determining all things, it's not really their fault, right? And we believe that we have an inherited condition that forces us at times to do things we shouldn't do, and that at times we also do consciously things we shouldn't do, but that there are times we can also choose not to do things. So we're not required or determined to do it, like Joseph and Potiphar's wife. Another example that I gave to Maury and that I use in the writings that I wrote regarding that issue, so that he can choose. He was not overcome. He was not required by the sin in him to sin in that instance. That doesn't mean Joseph didn't sin in other instances where he couldn't overcome that. Obviously he did, but not in that instance. So you see, we can choose otherwise at times, and that's what Jaho God allows. He allows that to happen. And then at times he requires certain things to happen, like with Judas, in order for the Messiah to be betrayed, but that's all consistent with the way that the person who ultimately was Judas was feeling at the time, and even Satan entered into him, so that things would come out that way. And Jaho knew that's what would happen. So he's the one knowing the beginning from the ending, where all those things are concerned. And where these things are concerned, he knows the end from the beginning as well, right? He knows every possible name Adam can name, but he chooses not to know which one's going to be named until it happens. He knows where Adam and Eve are, but he chooses not to immediately find them when they don't come in the way that he's used to. He wants to know where they are and have them come in response to that question. And that's what he asks. So then the man begins to answer. Verse 10, I heard your sound in the enclosed garden, but because I am naked, I became afraid. So I began to hide. Verse 10, Greek translation, then the man said to Lord Jaho God, I heard your sound as you moved around in the enclosed garden, and I became afraid because I'm naked. That is why I was concealed among the tree. Verse 11, Hebrew translation, then Jaho God began to say, who openly stated concerning you that you are naked? Now let's notice that right there. That Jaho God here first starts with the possible reason for this condition as someone else telling the man. He doesn't attribute the problem or issue to what the man chose immediately, but then he follows up and says, unless, if it's not someone who told you this, maybe the serpent came up or some other creature came and told them, hey, you guys are naked, made him start to feel bad. Unless it is because you ate from the tree from which I commanded you not to eat. Verse 11, Greek translation, so Lord Jaho God said to the man, who announced to you that you are naked unless you ate from it? From the tree which I commanded you, you must not eat only from this. And so here again you see Jaho God is not immediately like zooming in on a spiritual recording of all the events, tracing it back and then replaying it real quick while he's talking to them. That's not what is communicated in the biblical text. Could he do that? Could he find out by tracing his spirit through every existing creature, including the whispering creature, and figure out where the trigger was? Probably. I don't know how that works in the metaphysical sense, but it's conceivable. My point is, that's not what he did. It says right here, he asked him. Just like the serpent, the whispering creature, wanted Eve to tell him what would happen and what they shouldn't do, so it was clear she knew. Here, Jaho God is coming to the man, just like what Jesus said you do. You go right to the person. See, he's not going to just zoom outside of the person and find the serpent. That would be inconsistent even with what his son said. So he learned that from Jaho. He's going right to the man. And in the same way, you could consider the account of Cain and Abel. Right? When Jaho saw Cain and Abel, and he saw that Cain was jealous of Abel, and he went to him and said, if you keep going, you're going to sin and it's going to get you. But if you don't, there'll be an you'll be praised for not doing it. And then he left Cain. Right? He didn't just stay there and watch over Cain and Abel and hover over them. He let him go. Just like he let Adam and Eve on their own and came back to them at the appointed time. Cain and Abel, he even knew Cain was about to do it. In the case of Adam and Eve, he did not have that kind of concern yet. There was the issue, the possibility. That's why the tree's there. That's why he gave him the command. So obviously he knew it was possible. That's one of the two outcomes he stated right there is the reason they knew they were naked. But with Cain and Abel, Jaho said, and he already had sin in working in Cain, he even addressed that specifically to him, and then left him and allowed him to kill his brother. You see what that shows us is he's not going to force you to do something. He's not going to control you unless it's necessary for his purpose. Like with his son or other things, he will prevent things and cause things to happen that he chooses. But then he lets things happen that he doesn't choose. Right? He didn't choose for Cain to kill Abel. Cain chose to kill Abel. Jaho, God, came to Cain and tried to stop him, but did not stop him. In the same way, even more so in this case with Adam and Eve, he gave him the command, told him what not to do, and gave him everything. All he had to do was the one thing that established what right and wrong was before Adam and Eve knew it. But by taking it on their own, they started to choose it. And then in choosing it on their own, they brought forth all these terrible things. Over the course of time, of course. It wasn't immediately that everything bad entered the world, although we had Cain and Abel pretty soon thereafter. But my point is, Jaho lets these things occur, and after that, he makes a judgment. Because we all have to die in that sense because of what Adam and Eve chose. They chose to choose on their own, apart from Jah, the source of life. And by contrast, we have Jesus, who says that he lives because of the Father, and he does everything the Father tells him to. So where Adam failed, Jesus did not. And that's why we believe that though in Adam all are dying, in Jesus all are made alive. But let's get back to this account. I'm just making some parallels. This is a Christian channel, and ultimately we read these texts with the aim of giving Jah praise and pointing out the things that are spoken of concerning Jesus and what happened to us, why we're in this condition. As good as it can be at times, we know ultimately it's not what we should be in. It's flawed. The condition of the earth and of humankind leading to sin and death and all the terrible things, we know that's not right. And so we trust in Jah to make it completely right eventually. But this is where we believe it all went wrong. So then it says, if you notice here, so Jaho says, who told you were naked? Why aren't you coming out to me? Did someone tell you this? Or did you eat from the tree I told you not to eat? So verse 12, the man began to say, the woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave to me from the tree, and so I started to eat. Verse 12, Greek translation, then the man said, the woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me from the tree, so I ate. So right here, right at this point where they're now the choice of what was wrong, the covering of themselves because of vanity, and the hiding from Jaho, and of course the eating of the tree, the vanity and the hiding subsequent to the eating of the tree, whereas before that's not what they had done. And so now the man, because of Jaho confronting him over what he did wrong, starts to blame the woman. And men, at times, we do that today. I don't think maybe we do have that condition in a way that's just hard for us to see. And probably it's because, we believe women are there to help us. And we shouldn't think of that in a way that's unreasonable. But that is how women were made. That's certainly how Adam understood Eve. And so by assistant, we don't mean someone lower than us. We mean someone different than us that we work with in order to be complete. And so probably Adam did have a feeling. I mean, what he says is true, right? He's blaming someone else instead of saying, I'm sorry, Jaho, I should have told her no, but she gave me the fruit and I just love her so much. I was a dummy. So he just blamed her entirely, and that's not good. He should have apologized at a minimum and then said, hey, here's what happened. And then so Jaho, verse 13, started to say to the woman, after the man blames her, what is this thing you caused to happen? And then the woman began to answer, the whispering creature tricked me, so I started to eat. Verse 13, our last text from today's reading, Greek version, or translation of the Greek. So Lord Jaho, God said to the woman, what is this thing you did? Then the woman said, the hissing creature tricked me, so I ate. And so here we see so many things, as we've talked about in these day text shows. In this account in Genesis chapter 3, to the extent I've translated, we can see here, this really talks about a lot. We have not only the creation that we've discussed in several ways, and the other features of the surrounding land of Eden and Eden itself, the 5 rivers. But it talks about why we wear clothes. Ties it directly to this account where everything went wrong because we started to choose for ourselves what was right and wrong by deception and also through weakness, but we did it nonetheless. They didn't have to do that. We know that because Jesus didn't do it. And they really did have a choice. Just like Joseph, even in his sinful condition, he said no. So we can say no even now. We just have a harder time than Adam and Eve did, and it's because of what they did. But we still can get over it. That's why Jaho went to Cain and said, if you give in to this, it's going to be bad. If you don't, it'll be good. But Cain gave into it. And so at times we give into it and we make mistakes. And the extent of our mistake can determine the extent of our consequence. But this teaches us a lot. It helps us to understand and hopefully and appreciate that, it's not a good thing to hide from God. So if what we're doing, even though we're in sinful condition, and obviously it's harder for us to feel as close to God as Adam and Eve were before they sinned, but there's no point in hiding from God. He can see everything. He's the one we should go to in the way that we need to when we're most in need, and also when we just feel as good as we hope we do. Because while it's easy to go to God when we need something, it's also good to go to him when we have faith in what is true, when we're positive about life, so that he can see in us the joy that he originally made life for us to experience, and then to turn around and give him praise because we have it and he gave it to us and it's great. If we make mistakes and we feel bad, it's best to try to go to Jah and tell him we're sorry, and to help us to deal with those whom we may have wronged, and to try to build things back into a normal relationship. We can't always do that. Some people do things to us and it's just hard. You may be able to get past it, but some things have such a lingering effect that it's not something you ever want to deal with again. We don't have to, just because we might forgive or move on from some issue or person, that doesn't mean we have to then start building that relationship up again. Some relationships are not good to have, right? They'll hold you back. It's good to get things resolved if you can, if you have problems with people, but sometimes you can't. And it's not a good thing to go and blame other people either. We can do that. It's easy. Sometimes people are to blame, right? Sometimes people do stuff, but we do as well. So as long as we're being fair and we're not trying to blame others in a way that's inconsistent with what really happened, so that we're not responsible in ways when we really are, we don't want to do that. Right? We got that in part from our first parents, and they were confronted by Jaho, but they made a big mistake. So they had to deal with the one who was there to be their friend, who was there at the time of the day they were used to and making the sound that they heard, but they went a different way. They didn't think about him. They thought about themselves, and that's evident by their vanity, their clothes. They started thinking about themselves, exactly like we do today. And that vanity gets in our way. It keeps us from praising the God Jah the way we were made to. And it's something the whispering creature will use. Oh, vanity, the desire for being something more. Just ask yourself, is what's being offered to you, whatever more it is, and sometimes more is a good thing, but it's not always a good thing. Ask yourself, what will the more bring? Only you will know based on your circumstances and what the more is that you seek or that finds you. But I will tell you this. The best thing you can do is stay close to these texts. They tell us everything. They teach us what happened in the beginning and, quite frankly, what's been happening ever since. So I'm glad you've shared these day text readings with me through to Genesis chapter 3 and the point I've translated there. We're going to skip chapter 4. We'll read a little bit of chapter 5, and then we're going to get right into the full account of the story, the biblical history of the flood. A lot of great things there. So I'm looking forward to starting that day text show either tomorrow or Saturday. And then we'll see. I'll probably upload a video this Sunday. So I hope you enjoy the videos as I continue to update them. And I'm going to limit the live streaming, as I said, just to stay focused. I have a lot of things that I'm working on. Try to show me the respect that you would want if you were busy doing things in your own community. Do your own research. You'll find it enriching. And I'm quite confident you'll find the answers you seek.